Yeah, g'day, Ian White here from the Far North Queensland Aviation Museum in Mareeba. We're remembering this Anzac Day in 2025 by looking back at an aircraft crash, a tragedy that happened just off Machans Beach on the 5th of March 1945. It was a Hudson aircraft with 11 people on board, crashed into the sea just off the coast. Unfortunately, all people on board, all the servicemen on board died. 7 of those servicemen are buried in the Cairns military cemetery. Unfortunately, 4 of the bodies were never recovered. Aircraft and the crew were assigned to the 1st Australian Army, and they were tasked with initially picking up Major General Vasey and his staff and party from Melbourne and bringing them to Archerfield in Brisbane. Major General Vasey, who was heading to New Guinea to take command of the 6th Division, had a couple of days in Brisbane being briefed because that's where the operational headquarters were. And then the plan was that on the 4th of March they would go to Mareeba, where there was also some headquarters elements based, and then proceed on the 5th of March to Lae. Unfortunately, things didn't go to plan. They did the trip down to Melbourne and back to Brisbane, but there was a tropical low that looks to have formed in the Gulf of Carpentaria and headed down to the west of Townsville and then out over the Coral Sea. Stress that was never a cyclone, but it was a significant low. Central pressures are reported down at about 997 hectopascals. What actually happened was that the aircraft arrived in Townsville around about midday. The pilot certainly went to the Met Office and received a verbal briefing, and a written route forecast was prepared for a departure from Townsville at 2 p.m. at 1400. There is some conflicting evidence, but it is reasonably clear that the pilot left the Met Office with the understanding that while conditions were not good at Cairns, they were expected to improve from later on that afternoon. The aircraft departed Townsville a little bit after 1500 or 3 p.m. and arrived off Cairns at 4:15, 16:15. Thing to realise with Cairns Airport, and this is a photo of Cairns taken in 1942. There had been some work at the airfield, which is displayed at the left-hand side of this image, but it gives you an idea about where the airfield was. Certainly a lot smaller than the current airfield at Cairns, and located at the Cairns Township end of the current airport, so down at the southeast end. The challenges of flying into Cairns in poor weather, especially with low cloud, is due to the high terrain around the area. At the time, there was no radar at Cairns, there were no approach aids. The best you could get would be a bearing indication from the air radio station that was at Cairns. They can be unreliable, especially with thunderstorms around, and not an ideal way of getting down. Essentially, the runway is right beside Mount Whitfield. To the southeast you have the Yarrabah Peninsula with hills again over 1,000 feet. The main range lies further to the west, and just to the north there's a couple of hills near the coast, Yorkeys Knob and Trinity Hill. So it can be a challenging airfield to get into in bad weather. Certainly the weather was not good, but there is no way you would describe that as cyclonic conditions. We have the reports from witnesses on the ground who saw the aircraft. It came in tracking just off the coast. There were several orbits in the vicinity of Machans Beach, which is near the mouth of the Barron River. and in one of those orbits the aircraft lost control and crashed into the sea. Got a Google Earth view from about 800 feet over Machans Beach to give you some perspective. You can see the proximity of Mount Whitfield to the airfield. The cloud base was probably between 1,000 and 1,500 feet. So the tops of Mount Whitfield would have been likely under cloud. The aircraft reports of its altitude vary from around about 300 feet up to about 700 or 800 feet. Unfortunately, the aircraft, losing control, impacted the water quite hard at 20 minutes past 4 on the 5th of March. A de Havilland Rapide was rapidly flown from Cairns Airport and circled the area where the crash occurred. I think it was there within 10 or 15 minutes. Saw some flotsam, but no survivors. There were Army landing craft as well as RAF rescue vessels were on the scene within 30 to 45 minutes. Divers later determined that the aircraft had broken up when it hit the water, and due to the amount of rain, the water conditions would have been quite murky, with silt coming down and out of the Barron, and unfortunately they were only able to recover 7 of the personnel on board. This is a picture of the memorial that was put up off Machans Beach in 2018. I would encourage everybody to go down and pay their respects at that site.